please welcome on stage a local from Vienna, Cleo Winkler.
Hello. Hello, KCD. Yeah, this is my talk about cultivating inclusion and enhancing the diversity in the Kubernetes community. And I want to dive directly into it with a little bit of backstory. And basically, I started a year ago at a new client, and there were other external employees, and one of them said he has controversial takes, and I asked him, what are your takes? Then he told me his takes, and I want to play a little guessing game with you now. Did the person say, okay, that's not working perfectly. Women don't belong in tech. Raise your hand if you think that the person said that. Women can't think logically, or funding for women for STEM Mint is nonsense. Well, he said all of the above, and I kind of took this question with me. Why is my surrounding so male-dominated? And after a while, there was KubeCon, and I joined a mentor session where I asked the mentor nearly the same question, hey, why are there so few women in tech? And he said, pooh, I don't know. What can we do about that? And he said, make a talk. And after that, more or less, here we are. A person after the KubeCon hit me up, was like, hey, it was really inspiring. Let's make a talk together. The person quit by now. And here we are. So why are there so few women in tech? Basically, another guessing game, is it a pipeline problem? We have too few females that graduate from a computer science bachelor, and therefore there are less people. Women don't like nerds, or meritocracy. Well, it's none of the above, surprise. And I want to dive into the history, how over the past 70 years, how females were in software engineering. And it basically boils down to how it was a software. If you look, for example, at the 1950s, the software field was primarily female-dominated, as writing code was something associated with typing, and typing at that time was primarily done by secretaries, therefore it had a weird connotation to it. It was very negatively seen. And if you count, for example, the images here, it's, I think, 13 out of 20 images that have a female person in them, which is way more than I usually see in my surrounding. So I want to go into one of the original sins of the computer science industry, and that is Lena. Does anyone know this picture here? Yes, at least one person. So this is a Playboy photo, and this is problematic for several reasons. For example, many people don't feel very welcomed that this is the de facto image benchmarking standard for compression and other things, and they feel quite excluded from it. And there are even quotes from people that say, yeah, I mean, we have this picture for, I don't know, 50 years. After a while, this is just pixels, which is, I think, the perfect example of dehumanization and objectification. So when do you guess was this picture banned? Was it 5 years ago? Was it last year? Well, it was in April of this year, which kind of shows how long mistakes can sustain in a computer science community. But originally, the things that led that fewer females went into computer science have a lot to do with research from two psychologists that were consulted by IBM to find what makes a good programmer. And IBM had a programming test which was basically a bunch of logic and puzzle solving. But they also wanted to see which characteristics make a good programmer. And they somehow concluded that programmers are crazy about puzzles, tend to like research application and risk-taking, and don't like people. And if you filter out for this stereotype of antisocial behavior, you're filtering out many women because it doesn't show up as much. After that, there was more advertisement. Basically, hiring programmers became kind of sexual. Also, computer advertisement became kind of sexual. And these are just 2 examples. And after there were already fewer and fewer women in this field, companies started to also ask the wrong questions for hiring. For example, triology started to ask very high pressure and intensive questions that are more or less quite nonsense. For example, how many piano tuners are there in San Francisco, which is without any data, you can maybe make a guess, but nothing else. And male people tend to answer these questions more confident, and therefore they kind of filter these things out. This led to bro culture at some point. It also led to a meritocracy with PayPal and etc. And if you want to see more about this, there's a fantastic book called Brotopia, where I have the data from. Basically, we can see in the 1984, we had the highest amount of females that would get a computer science bachelor, and ever since it declined, and over the past 4 years, it kind of grew back. The other lines are other fields, where we can see that it still goes up. This is Brotopia, so yeah. But this is a diversity talk, and you could maybe ask the question, why does diversity matter? Well, first and foremost, this is also something I have from the mentor session. The foundations are Linux Foundation, Cloud Native Foundation, etc., are more or less defined as community project companies. So the community is at the first place, because without a community, we wouldn't have projects. Without projects, there also wouldn't be companies that use the projects. And this is just a very Linux Foundation reason. The next one would be that you have literally things that you cannot think about if you're not in the position. So, for example, a known would be I have a minority group in my company. Known unknowns would be I know that people feel maybe unwell because they're a minority group, and unknown would be the harassment that these individuals receive. And now I want to go into a few studies. Diverse teams actually perform better. So, for example, you have a CleverPop study that basically shows, yeah, hey, diverse team have 15% more friction, have 60% better results. For tech companies, there's more opportunity than the average company. This shows over 2 locations, age difference, gender diversity, etc. But diverse teams also perform better if you believe McKinsey, who made a report on it and basically said, oh yeah, if we look at the top 500 companies and we look at which companies there's a diversity, where's diversity in the managing level, we can see that these companies perform better. There are more statistics to this. But my point is that it's actually not the case, but also it is, depends. There are many critiques about the McKinsey study, for example, and also CleverPop, that they basically produce results that are irreproducible. And there's even a new paper about this that came out in April this year that basically says, hey, we can neither prove nor disprove that diversity brings something financially. In some contexts where you need a creative solution, it performs better, but the essence of the paper is we need more research on this topic. Another reason why you would want to have diversity is to attract and sustain talent. So for example, a friend of mine currently is limited by the Ministry of Germany whom they can hire, and they are basically excluding Taiwan, India, etc., which is quite awful for them because they have a very specialized problem, which only few people in the world even know, and it creates a lot of barriers if you just filter out people that you could work with. There's also some Glassdoor research. If you have a diverse workplace, people that are in a minority group will feel more welcomed, they will stay longer, etc. Yeah. But if we want to improve this, we need to speak about biases. And there are now some examples. For example, discrimination against women. If you would ask a voice assistant, hey, I'm having a heart attack, what should I do? The response would be, yeah, maybe call this number and go to the hospital. Mind you that it's most likely the symptoms of a male heart attack. But if you would ask, hey, I'm getting domestic violence, I don't know, getting raped, etc., they usually would respond with, I don't know, which is also not that only female persons can receive this, but it's so stigmatized that it's also not coming through. Another example would be the female crash dummies that were, I think, initiated 2 years ago, where we can see that the anatomy for crash dummies is not exactly the same, and that cars are a lot less safe for female persons than male persons. Phone sizes are usually designed for male hands instead of female hands, and this kind of shows a continuous pattern where tech is primarily designed for not a minority, but one special group. So discrimination against people of color would, for example, include that facial recognition usually works way better for lighter skin tones than darker skin tones. You would have something like blood oxygen that is not as measurable in darker skin tones. And because we're still at a tech conference, we should look at gender bias in pull requests. And there is a very nice study on this from 2017 that basically goes into, hey, why we have the hypothesis that female pull requests are less likely to be merged. If you look at the absolute numbers, they are more likely to be merged due to several reasons. Basically, if the owners and project maintainers know each other, it doesn't have really an influence. But if it's a new person that opens a pull request, we can see that if the gender is visible, the acceptance rate drops by 12%. For men, it only drops for 4%, but this is excluding the covariance. And if you adapt it to the covariance, it's, I think, 4% drop for a woman and more or less no statistically significant drop for male persons. So they did a control group where the gender was not visible. They did a control group where the gender was visible, and these are the results, more or less. This is also a graph above for all the programming languages. And as we can see, usually woman pull requests in the absolute matter get merged more likely. So, yeah. And basically what the paper concludes is there is some form of discrimination. We don't know why. We can make theories if it's gender roles, etc. But why women pull requests in the absolute matter are getting merged more likely is probably because of survivorship, selection bias, and women being held to higher performance standards. And there's discrimination in AI, of course. Who can raise their hand if they notice what is wrong with this picture? Yeah. So this is not an intended use in this app, but it's something that occurs if we're not be careful what kind of data we feed into AIs. And I think it's quite good that we see with recent AI advancements that there are more and more that basically our stereotypes are getting reinforced and stronger, and if we don't steer against that, we will end up in a very weird place. By the way, they just fixed it by removing the gorilla label, and to this day, there is no gorilla label. And now to a spicy part, diversity in open source. This is the Linux Foundation open source report from 2021, and it has a lot of really cool data, in my opinion, that we will go through now. So if you've ever wondered how the demographic and etc. look in open source community, we will go through it now. Basically, we can see that a majority is white. We can see that the majority is employed full-time. We can also see that 2/3 of the people are from either Europe or North America. We can see that we have a majority in a male population here, and we can also see that there are a small amount of people that are non-gender conforming. There's transgender people. We have also a 75% hetero aspect. We have, in my opinion, a quite diverse age range between majority 25 and 54 years. And nearly half of the open source community has caregiving responsibilities, either for a child or for an elder or someone else. And if we look now at how welcome the open source community is, or how people feel about that, we can see that men in general feel more welcome, and the least amount welcome feels black people in North America. The ethnicities were only asked in North America and nowhere else. That's why it's specifically labeled with North America. But we can also see that it drops by 10% for women and also for queer people, and yeah. And here's a very interesting slide for me. We can see that a lot of people face the problem that the owners or the maintainers don't respond to the questions or contributions, but there are a few weird things, in my opinion. We have impersonating, we have stalking, we have sexual advancements, and that is something that I didn't expect, at least. And I find it quite crazy that that number is 10%. Yeah, I think we can do better here. Here we can see who feels unwelcomed by the language that we use. We can see that, that non-binary people usually have the highest problem with it, but it's not really looking good for women or indigenous people as well. We have stereotypes, and the most amount or the most frequency also receive non-binary persons, but the second most is for black people, and afterwards for indigenous women and queer people, which is also quite crazy. Do you have experience, if you have experience with harassment, was it connected to your background, with a majority saying yes, which is also not that feeling good, and if you witnessed the experience hostility, harassment, so a majority is basically saying, hey, if I've seen that there's something problematic, they did nothing about it, and I think that is something that we can take from this, that we should be more active if we see something like this. For the people that don't feel welcome in open source, they also don't trust the code of conduct that is enforced. we see that Middle East, for example, doesn't has or that more people have a less reliable internet connection. So if you, for example, host weekly video meetings, you're maybe excluding that group. And here we can see that a majority that started with tech, that they had a computer at home. So for many people, this will be more important later with Know Your Privilege, that most likely you had the chance to play around with tech for a long time, whereas others didn't have that chance. So how's the diversity looking in Kubernetes? If we look at the KubeCon over the years, we basically can see, hey, we have percentages for the female and gender non-conforming speakers for keynotes and breakouts. And if we put this together, we can see that for KubeCon EU, we have a decline in female keynote speakers, gender non-conforming, and the breakout sessions, something like this, are going up. If we look at KubeCon EU, majority is coming from Europe, also Asia, depending on the context. If we look at the KCD Austrian report, we can see we had last year 6 female speakers and 29 male speakers, even though 3 female speakers made the most popular sessions, which is something very cool in my opinion. And there was also a non-binary person, totally don't know who that was. We have a majority coming from Austria. I mean, who could have guessed, right? But how can we improve the diversity? I hope I gave you enough examples why diversity matters in this thing. But you're already participating in the first step. You're actually listening. And I have this quote from a Native American that I listened to 2 weeks ago in New York at a climate change conference. It's really important that we start to actively listen to what other people say, what are the discrimination that other people face, etc. And coming to open source pull requests, etc., it's really important that you know your biases, and if you, for example, would be merging a pull request from someone that is maybe female, that you know, hey, I'm more likely to disregard that. There's also a nice quote from a friend of mine who received like 100 million in funding. Austrians tend to ignore problems until the problem hit themselves. So don't be ignorant, care about others. And discrimination comes in many forms. Believe the people that actually take the courage to tell you. I've conducted a few interviews, and one person more or less started crying in the interview because she went very often to the managers and told them, hey, like that is not okay. And in the end, she got laid off with, you're a woman, you don't belong here, which is crazy. Give people the chance that haven't had the opportunity. So, as you can see in the data before, a majority had the opportunity to play with tech at home, but not every one of us has the opportunity to, I don't know, buy a few servers and start Kubernetes on it. So, if you're involved with the hiring process, give people the chance. If they say, hey, I've never had the opportunity, but I would really like to dive into it, give them the chance that they try it out. Know your privilege. You're most likely ended up here because it was easier for you than for others. And use inclusive language. And I mean, this is a very German problem. The generic masculine doesn't address everyone. But funny enough, if you use inclusive language for genders, you're more likely to be exclusive, for example, for people with disabilities. So I think this is still a problem that German needs to figure out. And last but not least, Linus did it, Linus Torvald, just for not tech tips. So can you. Everyone can change. Thank you.
Check. Great. Thanks for your talk. Amazing. If you're interested in the topic, we will again file another transparency report for KCD Austria 2024 as well. Also, if you're interested, the Linux Foundation is offering great courses online, and I think there are also instructor-led ones. If you want to learn more about diversity, and also if you're a community host, there are great courses that will help you to be more transparent, to focus on this topic in a more advanced way and to address it better. That's also something we do for KCD Austria each year. I think we have like 2 more minutes or something like that for questions. Again, friendly reminder, questions for the sake of gaining knowledge, please, and not for the sake of making a statement. Do we have any questions? Yes, please, over there. And there are also gummy bears for questions.
Thank you. Thanks for the talk. I was expecting actually to see a couple of examples when it comes to language to be more inclusive, and what fallacies or mistakes or traps that we can easily fall into, which will result in a less inclusive language. One remark is that personally, as a team lead, when I had a diverse team, actually it performed much better. So I experienced what you showed in your reports. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. I mean, inclusive language comes in many forms. It's really depending who you're addressing. For example, for non-binary people, maybe use their preferred pronouns, not maybe, use them. For other things, they're like, there are obvious racist statements that you could use that exclude the people, but I think it's appropriate to use the upcoming terms that people would like to have how they addressed. They would like, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, another question over there, please.
Sorry, which slide?
QR code of the report.
Yeah, still take a gummy bear.
Thanks, Cleo, for the talk. How we as organizers of events and meetups can attract more diverse people, because in Linz at least it's really hard to find non-male speakers, and we are always trying to reach out to people actively to try, hey, let's go, let's give a talk or something like that. But is there somewhere or things that we could change to attract more diversity into the communities?
I think one suggestion that I have is probably it's probably a egg chicken problem, but I think if you have a more female speakers, that would probably attract more diversity, and this could maybe result in a loop, but right now I can't give you like a proper suggestion for this.
All right. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the answers as well. Thanks for being a speaker. Here's a little gift.
Thank you.
It's a tremendous effort to speak at the conference, to apply, etc. Or do we have another question?
I see one.
Yes? No? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you because of the lights. Okay. There's enough time.
Yeah, these are some proper blinders.
Hi, thanks. On my opinion, there is another diversity group which you did not mention. Maybe it's not, just give me more information about this. I'm speaking about students. What do you think about this group? Thank you.
We did see that a lot of people are actually in between the age of, I think, 18 and 24, which is also the part where I'm counted in. So I think students is something that at least the Linux Foundation, Cloud Native Foundation are actually aware of, because they're offering more and more people mentor programs, and I think they are already trying to increase this. I don't know if this satisfied your question. All right.
I think that's the perfect statement to close. One more information regarding students. Also, we at KCD Austria offer student tickets. So also for the next time, if you know somebody who's not able to afford it or who's just still in school or in university, we offer heavy discounts on student tickets. Just reach out to us. Should be enough for everybody who wants to join. At least it was this year. All right. Thanks. Short coffee breaks. See you back in 10 minutes for the next talk.